Okay, where you have labor supply, labor demand, and your labor force. Okay, so when labor market demand equals to supply, people who are willing to work are all fully employed. Alright, so this is your N, and this is a market wage. Okay, but the economy still has unemployment because this is your labor force on the right. This is the number of people employed. So the gap is L minus N is the U. Okay, so what would worsen this situation? Okay, which is given in the second diagram. That in an economy, there are certain forces that force wages to go up. So that's why you can see if you were to draw a higher wage rate. Alright, your labor demand, look at where my arrow is pointing, actually will fall. Alright, due to higher wages, firms will cut back offering jobs to workers. But workers will increase their labor supply because they are more willing to work. So you could see your number of people employed move all the way to the left. The unemployment gap increases. And this extra gap, alright, is called classical unemployment. Now, please don't spend day and night to study this because this is microeconomics. Alright? And you should have learned it in Intro to Econ. But if you didn't, the concept is very simple. Alright? It is a case where wages are set too high. Specifically, it's set above the market equilibrium wage. Alright? So we go back to our flow diagram to understand why is it that wages are set too high. Okay? Then you branch up again. Okay, A is the minimum wage law. It was a law. Alright, it was set, okay, to protect the workers. Okay, you could actually look at your lecture notes. I gave you a chart which I'm not going through. Okay, I gave you a chart to show all over the world, especially even in Asia. Okay, don't turn, let's look at the charts I have on the screen. Alright, these economies deemed to us to be poorer around us, they all have minimum wage. They are all in US dollar and they are the annual salary. So these are the base wage to protect the workers. And yet you can see they are still astonishing very low. Look at 672, which means only 1 month is only 50 US dollar. But imagine if there is no minimum wage law, it's even lower. Right? So minimum wage law was set up to protect primarily the lowly skilled, lowly wage workers, to give them a baseline salary. Okay? And you don't see it in Singapore. Singapore has been very defensive against minimum wage law. Alright? Because it will worsen unemployment. Okay? Alright? So there is, okay, a video clip about there is a growing trend that all over the world, right, countries are adopting minimum wage. Even Singapore's biggest competitor, Hong Kong, has minimum wage. Right, okay, and even US, a so-called democratic country, has minimum wage. Minimum wage in US is US $10 per hour. That works out to be $12 in Singapore. Alright, who works for $12? Our cleaners, our F&B crew don't even earn 12, primarily 8 to 10. Alright, so in this case, all over the world, there are minimum wage law. But there is a debate in Singapore that we should not go for it. So 2 weeks ago, there was a discussion. Maybe we should set a minimum wage law for cleaners in Singapore. Alright, so again, the argument came up again. Alright, the pros and the cons. So you can read up the video, okay, on this aspect. So when you set up the minimum wage law, you can see, alright, your unemployment will forever stay there. Because there are firms who simply cannot pay US $10. They just can't afford you. You remain unemployed. So this is tolerable. Okay, so that's called classical unemployment. Now, the second reason why there is classical unemployment is collective bargaining. The very famous collective bargaining situation was SMRT bus drivers. They went on strike, remember? They went on strike 2 days. Right? So they actually pushed up wages. Right? So SMRT has to give in to them, revise their salary for the Malaysian and the China bus drivers. But it would mean that if you are applying a job to be a bus driver, the firm may say, because of cost went up, they're not so willing to hire you. So you went out of job because of high wages. So that is classical unemployment. Okay, so again, it's given in your lecture notes. Okay, and the third type, very interestingly, is due to efficient wage model. Now, why do I say this is interesting? The first case was government protected the workers. Alright? Second was the trade union. All the workers try to protect themselves. So they forced the firms to pay them higher wages. But the third case was the firms themselves choose to pay high salary. Okay, so you don't have to turn, just look at the screen, okay, to know that the efficient wage model, right, is actually paid by the firm, right, to improve their morale and productivity. So they were not under pressure by the labor union or the government. They themselves choose to do it. And the first man to practice efficient wage model was Henry Ford, because during those times, he is in need of technicians and engineers and mechanics. Alright? So he has to lure them over and he has to keep them, alright, operating. So he will pay them high salary. Okay? Alright? And that time, that amount, alright, he distributed his profit. That time, this amount is huge. It's like millions now. But he distributed to his employees. So he practiced the efficient wage model. So this is widely practiced in the banking sector. When you need top bankers, alright, you need to retain them. So you pay them very high. But because it eats into the firm's production cost, the firm cannot hire, alright, other types of workers. So in this case, going back to our flow diagram, alright, you have classical unemployment. Alright, so this bounds to happen. And you don't want to correct it because government should look into the rights of poor, lowly skilled workers. Workers should have a voice to say that, they want better payout and working condition. And, right, government shouldn't penalize firms for paying well. So in this case, classical unemployment is tolerable and unavoidable. Okay, so that will form the natural rate of unemployment. Okay, the second type, you have heard about it before, is frictional unemployment. Okay, very common among new graduates. Okay, and women joining workforce. Okay, housewife who decide to join the workforce. Frictional unemployment is always about time taken to find jobs. There's a mismatch of information. Right? Okay? The graduates and the women join the workforce, but they did not have sufficient information to know where the jobs are. So they took a long time to search jobs. So in this case, they were out of jobs for certain periods. So during the period when the manpower officer called them, they will say, oh, I haven't found a job. So when you count them, they will go into frictional unemployment, into the natural rate of unemployment. So this is tolerable, this is unavoidable. Okay, but government will actually take action because if our graduates in Singapore is taking 1 year to find jobs because they ask for high pay, they ask for unrealistic expectation, then it will become discouraged worker, that's a possibility. It will worsen unemployment rates. So government, although no, this is unavoidable, government will do something about it. Okay, so this you can read out in your lecture notes under page down, frictional, okay, unemployment. Okay, then finally, as you can see in your notes, the last one is structural. Alright, so this is usually applicable for elderly, right, or older workers. They were out of jobs because, unlike the new graduates and women, it's because they don't know where the jobs are. For structural unemployment, the elderly or the older workers did not have the right skills. Their skills become obsolete. Right? Okay, and that happened in Singapore. In the 90s to 2000, a lot of factories moved out of Singapore. Right? The assembly line, some of the production line for electronic parts, they all moved to Malaysia and China. So these production workers, right, couldn't find jobs in the computer company, cannot find jobs in the financial market. Right? And they are too old to renew their skills. So you're bound to find such people occurring in your economy. Okay, so again, just to show you, okay, the data, okay, on structural unemployment in Singapore. So don't have to turn to it. Okay, this is a scenario. You can see, right, structural unemployment in Singapore for the period of 98 to 2005 was growing. This is a period where China is booming because all the factories moved to China. So Singapore, we lost a lot of jobs in the manufacturing line. So that's why you can see total structural unemployment is growing. Okay, and what grows along with it was the blue line, which is by the locals. Right, so they lost their jobs, they were retrenched, but they couldn't find jobs in the new economies, be it in the financial sector or even in the manufacturing, because they are more technical based. Alright, so in this case, structural unemployment contributes to the natural rate of unemployment. Alright, so you can see all these pages of lecture notes, they are very reading in nature. That's why you have to read it with an example in mind. If not, you will be very bored because there is no diagrams to draw. Okay, so these are what we call, okay, the constitution to natural rate of unemployment. So I must first measure the natural rate. When I do my survey on the unemployed, I must ask them, why are they out of jobs first? Right? If I can classify them under classical U, fictional U, structural U, I get my UN first. And the UN, the tolerable rate for most countries is about 4%. Okay, so again, let me show you the data. Don't have to turn. Look at your notes. Okay, this is the tolerable rate. Okay, the standard rate is usually 7%. Okay, but you look at some countries like Spain. Remember, they have one of the largest youth unemployment. It means that frictional unemployment is very high because the youth takes a long time to find jobs. For them, the natural rate is 18.1. It means to say, for Spain, if unemployment rate is 20%, natural rate is 18, then they will say, oh yeah, the economy is shrinking, let's do something. But you look at, let's say, Japan, 4.3. If the actual unemployment is 18.1, the economy is in deep fire already. So natural rate will vary across countries, but anything that is more than 4 means structurally you are very unsound. One of your causes of natural rate is a bit too high. And you can see these are the countries that I showed you, the youth unemployment was very high. So frictional unemployment can be very serious. Okay? Right? So the natural rate must be the basis of comparison. Then you tackle your own unemployment problem. But if your natural rate is far too high, right, your economy is quite unsound. Okay? So for US, the natural rate is 6.1, which is very unsound. Okay? For a big economy, you can tolerate so many people out of job because of these causes. Something is wrong. Now, for US, the high UN is mainly the minimum wage. A lot of reports shows in US, alright, the minimum wage was the main cause the US economy cannot revive. Because minimum wage is minimum US $10, and that's an average. Some some industries was $40 per hour, which is too high. So that will constitute to high classical unemployment, giving them a high natural rate of unemployment. It means they can tolerate 6.1, which is far too high already. Okay, so in this case, we want to move on to understand. Right? We want to control the natural rate of unemployment. So what are the factors we need to know? Okay, so with this, I need you to turn with me to the next segment of your notes, which is page 14. So I skipped